Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Bikini and the Brain podcast. My name is Ashley Kaltwasser, and beside me, I have Adam Bonilla from Team Elite Physique.com. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello out there. It's President's Day? Yeah?
It is President's Day.
Happy President's Day.
I found out this morning at 7 a.m. It's President's Day. You know how I found out?
How?
Because they're remodeling my house, right?
Uh-huh.
And they wouldn't let the guys in to the community on a holiday. And so
Oh,
they called me at
really?
7 in the morning. They're like, yeah, we have the pool guy, vintage pools here with this truck, this plaster truck. So there's like, they let all the workers in. There's like 6 of them there to help plaster the pool because they're remodeling the pool at the prep house. And then the big truck they wouldn't let in because it was President's Day. So all those guys.
Weird.
Yeah. So I found out this morning at 7 o'clock.
Unnecessary. Well, there you go.
So what do we got on the docket for today?
So I was thinking, man, bikini. In fact, the physique sports in general, a lot of people think it's just aesthetics or strength or genetics, but man, it's a lot of mental toughness as well. And I think that's something that we overlook, how mentally tough you have to be to compete in the sport.
Yeah.
A lot of repetition, a lot of consistency is involved, a lot of willpower.
I agree. Yeah, 100%. I think what's funny is I feel like people think the sport of physique sports is all in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think anyone really has an issue with the gym part of it.
Right.
I mean, how many people do you really run into? Like, you're a coach. How many people do you run into that's like, man, I just can't get to the gym. Like, I have no motivation to work out. Like, I don't run into
rarely, but even then it doesn't last long.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. You need a week off and you're back in and you're motivated like crazy to get back to the gym. So the sport isn't just the gym. The sport, I always tell everyone, it's really the sport of dieting. Like, it's the sport of following your nutrition plan 23 hours of the day, outside of the 1 hour that you're in the gym. That's literally the sport is that part of it, and it's tough.
So. Yeah. And there's also other elements to the sport that makes it mentally tough as well that we'll get into. A lot of it too is just outside circumstances as well, such as constant scrutiny of your physique and being under like the constant eye, whether it be your coach, the public, and even when you're on stage, you're going to get judged. So just know that that's part of the sport is getting critiqued, and some people can handle it, some people cannot.
Yeah, that is, and it's tough because you're literally putting yourself on stage to be criticized about your body.
Yeah.
That's literally what you're doing up there in the most revealing thing you could pretty much be in, and it's like, yeah, it's bittersweet sometimes,
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah. So those moments, they can be really hard. And when you do get feedback, which everyone should get feedback after their show, highly recommend, they're going to hopefully be harsh and honest with you. That's the only way you're going to be able to see for yourself what you need to improve out of the horse's mouth, right? Because your family is probably going to tell you should have won the show. Your boyfriend's going to say you looked perfect. I don't see anything wrong. God bless, but they're not judges. So sometimes it takes a judge to point these out. And I know they do it in the most respectful way, but sometimes it can hurt if you're not secure enough with, yourself. And sometimes it can feel, I don't know, discouraging. Like if somebody took, let's say, a year off and just worked on this body part that was lagging, and just to find out that they still have a ways to go, that can also be a little tough to handle mentally.
Yeah, that one's a real tough one, especially because you're feeling good going into it. You're like, I made the improvements, I'm ready to go. And then you find out, hey, I still need another probably year to do the rest of the work,
Mm-hmm, absolutely. It can be tough. And I think also it can be kind of tough as well to think that you brought your best package, like, oh man, this is my absolute best. And then when you compete, maybe you don't do as well as you expected. Maybe you don't get the feedback that you've been wanting. That can also, that can hurt a little bit.
Yeah. And I think and that's one of the things that people really need to understand too, is different shows are different people. It's not going to be the same. Your placing can fluctuate quite a bit, and it could fluctuate in both ways. You could do really, really good at the next show because no one good showed up. And then the next show you could show up like, and this happens a lot at the national level. People really seem to put a lot of the rankings into it at like the national level. Like, this is not NASCAR and where you're racing the same guys in every different race. It's a different group. It's a entirely different sport almost the next
Mhm.
time you do it, because it's different people, it's completely
Yes.
different. So it's not like like people think of it too much like other sports, like, or like a boxing or fighting. You have like your ranking order, and if you lose to rank number 10 and you're number 5, now you're ranked number 10. Like, that's not it. It's not how it goes. So people go to USA's, they get 5th place one year, and then they go back the next year thinking they made their improvements, and they get 12th place the next year. But the 11 in front of you were better than the entire 4
Yeah.
that were beat you the last time. Like, it's a different thing, so you can't. I get that email a lot, and where people will say, yeah, I'm slipping in placings. And I'm like, you're not really, there's no such thing as like slipping in placings unless it's the same people every time.
Yeah.
That's different. Like if you're on like a big stage and it's the same exact people every time, and then all of a sudden these girls are beating you. Yeah, I could see that. You could kind of look at it that way. But it's just a different thing. So don't put too much emphasis on that for sure, because that's just not that's not a real stat to go off of.
Absolutely. And it can come down to, like you said, who's judging it? Who are you standing next to on the lineup? Like if I stood next to really big and muscular girls, they're going to make me look too small. Um, or maybe I'll stand against girls that are more my build, and then I fit right in. So a lot of it has to do with who you're standing next to, who shows up, how that makes you look. And you know what? Honestly, some people just didn't shine that day. And I know that doesn't sound like very scientific because you can't really put your finger on it. But, sometimes you just walk out and someone just shines and blows you away. You can't put your finger on it, but wow, they just captivated you. Sometimes that can happen. Some days it's your day, some days it's not. So it's important just to not take the placing to heart so much if you know you've been improving, right?
Yeah.
If you know you've been improving and things are growing and you look better, you don't need to necessarily involve your placings with that. As long as you're on the upward trajectory and you're making these changes for the good, then you need to keep that in mind, because I always say this, you know what every Olympia champion has in common is they've all lost. And they I'm sure have handfuls of times they disappointed themselves. Maybe they thought they could have done better, or maybe they messed up their prep. Anyway, no one's undefeated in the sport. So if you haven't lost already, guess what? You're going to. Sorry to break it to you.
Yeah.
I promise you, you're going to lose, because at some point, unless you, I guess, win a local show and then just retire. I suppose you can do that. But if you're in it for the long run and you want to work your way up to a pro and maybe even qualify for Olympia, just know you're going to lose at some point. Sorry to break it to you.
Yeah.
Everyone has lost. No one's undefeated.
So I think, as we dive into bikini, being a tough sport mentally, I think we go into, the dieting part of it, and just how, demanding the diet is. And
That's what
like,
gets people the most.
yeah, I would say it's I would say 100%. Yeah. For the number one thing is going to be the diet. And we talk about it all the time, but especially the diet in the off season where people get set back,
Yes.
And, there's only so much we can say about that in terms of, staying on plan and staying consistent. Targets to shoot for, which we've given you targets to shoot for, which, I guess we can go over that again, but, just, why it's important, I think is the important thing. It's like, why, okay, what's my motivation in the off season to stay within, 10% of stage weight, or, 10 to 12% above stage weight? What's my motivation? And I think that is really the hardest part of it, because people automatically assume that if I'm staying within 10%, 12% above stage weight, that my life is going to suck because of it. And that's what I hate hearing. I'm like, there's very little difference of you staying within 10 to 12% above stage weight than like a normal fitness person.
Yeah.
It's not crazy. Like, you might be doing 20 minutes of cardio 5 days a week, and you might just not be eating every single thing that you want to eat, but you're still going to eat pretty good.
Right.
You're still going to be able to go, like, well, they just automatically assume, well, that means I'm going to be eating tilapia and doing an hour cardio fasted, and then I'm not going to be ever to go out with my boyfriend and to a restaurant. Like, and my whole life sucks because I can't go to parties and family events. And I'm like, no, none of that. Like, none of that is happens. Like, Kimber's in prep right now. She's going to dinners with me still once a week. Like, it's just, you have to make the right choices, and your why is got to be the most important thing. And so the reason that it's so important that you're staying in shape in the off season is you're trying to always make improvements. And the problem is that what you run into so there's two different types of people that really, in bikini world. It's the people who are going to make progress every single year, And then you have your transformation people who are going to transform into the show every single time. And they're just trying to get back to the last physique they had. They're not really making improvements. They're just, because they're dieting so hard, they're dieting off muscle. If they did gain any muscle, they're dieting it off. They're just trying to get back to where they were. And then eventually it becomes harder and harder and harder to get back to where you were. And then those are the people that are like, oh, I hate this sport. I quit because it ruined my body. And I'm like, no, it was your off seasons that ruined your body. And it's because your first year you put on 20 pounds, then 30 pounds, then 40 pounds, and then all of a sudden it got so hard to get you back on stage that it wasn't worth it to you anymore to go through it anymore, because it's just kind of the appeal wore off to you. And now now you hate the sport and you want to blame the sport, but it was always your off seasons, And so that's one of the really tough things about it is, if you're committing to the sport, you're going to commit to the diet more than anything,
Yeah. A lot of people neglect to realize how important the off season is, but the transformation clients, like you just described, it's basically a vicious cycle. So what they put on too much weight in the off season, therefore their contest prep has to be super miserable and extreme, and they have to lose a lot of weight. And then when they get done with the in season, they're done with their show, they're so tired of it and they're so, I guess, hungry that they go crazy and binge, and there begins the vicious cycle. Then the off season, getting overweight again. And let's keep in mind, after the show, your body is like a calorie sponge at that point. So you're very susceptible to putting on body fat. And then it begins again. And then they put on a whole bunch of weight in the off season. And to get back to the stage, they have to do this extreme diet, this yo-yo, this constant like up and down, black or white. Whereas off season, it should be a little more of a gray area. That's how I like to look at it. Off season is a little more gray. And when I'm in season, it's all go. So, it doesn't have to be miserable in the off season. I, I don't find that it's miserable for me. And I've talked many times about how I've learned to love my food, my prep food. I season it differently. I cook it. I found a way that works for me. So I don't really have cravings for cheesy nachos or anything like that. I'll have little treats here and there, but nothing crazy.
Yeah. I think that the real issue is people are like, thinking that dieting sucks or it's not fun. And I'm like, why are we talking about food being fun anyway? So like, it's just food. Like people think that the sacrifice of not eating pizza and not eating foods that they're not supposed to eat is a big sacrifice. And I'm like, you were never supposed to be like eating those things on the regular anyways. Why do you think you're sacrificing so much now by not having a pizza or not having those things? Like you're not like, no one ate those for centuries.
Right.
and now we're like, oh, we're sacrificing so much because I haven't had donuts, pizza, and a whatever shake, chocolate shake. Well, guess what? People that lived in like the 1800s never had any of those things, and they never complained about it. But now, because we have these foods that are like rich in fats and sugars, and also we get this huge dopamine rush, and we attach like happiness to it with all these commercials we've seen of like people enjoying their pizza and high-fiving and all this stuff growing up, that we think we just associate food now with this like happy, joyous occasion, which it never really was intended. It was just intended as fuel to survive. And we just, when we take ourselves away from that and we like look at it on paper, we're like, okay, what am I really doing here? Am I supposed to be like celebrating every time I eat a meal? Or am I really just trying to like fuel my car? And we're really in bodybuilding, you have to accept the fact, hey, you're going to be fueling your car. You're just because you're not eating those bad foods that you shouldn't be eating doesn't mean you're sacrificing. You're just eating regular. Like that's not a big deal to eat regular, So, right. And you can still have those things once in a while,
in moderation.
Yeah.
And, just like you kind of touched on, there's like fitness models that keep it together all year, not saying they're stage lean, but they're still in shape. And we all have that person that's at the gym, like the lady that shows up every weekday to do a little workout, to do cardio, and she stays pretty consistent all year. And you can tell she works out. She's got nice tone. And it's not like you're seeing any fluctuations, like huge fluctuations like us competitors do, because I do think it's unreasonable to stay like stage lean all year round. I wouldn't suggest doing that, but I don't think it's a big ask to stay within 10 to 12%. I don't think that's a big ask, but this is where the mental strength comes in, right? This is not necessarily anything to do with your physique. It's mental. It's your mind is what's keeping you like from binging or whatever the case may be. There's the great thing about living in the year 2024 is if you do have like a craving for something, there's probably a healthy alternative. Like protein bars have gotten so good to where a Snicker bar makes protein bars and they're like lower sugar and stuff. A milkshake you can substitute for a good tasting protein shake. Like it's not going to taste exactly the same, but there's some really good alternatives. So I think that again, you got to be mentally strong, and it becomes even tougher in the off season when you have that temptation, right? Sometimes whenever we're in season, everyone can pretty much get 100% and they're focused and they're motivated. But guess what? You're not going to be motivated 365 days per year. It's not going to happen. Okay. So that's where your willpower has to come in. Anybody can stay motivated for 16 weeks, but can you stay motivated 365? You know, it's not about motivation, it's about willpower and dedication.
Yeah, absolutely. Motivation will come in waves.
Yes, it comes and goes. It even fluctuates by the hour. I'm more motivated in the morning, and then by evening, I'm like,
Yeah.
don't ask me to work out.
And that's for any even job. Like my job, which I love more than literally like just more than anything. I love it so much. But even me, like sometimes I'm just really like a lot more motivated here than other days. And it's like, that's all I think about. I don't know how I could be more motivated, but it is. You just sometimes you just really want to do it, and sometimes you're like it's not as much. You're just trying to get through the day type of thing. It's just with anything that you do. So your why has to be big. What's funny is you're talking about those like having all the foods and living in today's day and age. I had to go in my messages on Instagram because someone messaged me the other day. They're sending us these like new low fat, low sugar chocolate bars. And I had one the other day, and they're like, "We want to send you a box. They want to send you one for Ashley too." So they're gonna come in maybe next week or so. Yay. No, they're great. I'll mention them now because I want you to try before we give them an honest review. But I had one. It's so wild because Kimber just gave me one for Valentine's Day. Right, gave me one of these bars, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool. This is something new." It was the whole bar was like 190 calories, I think it was, but it was like pretty healthy. And I'm like, this is great. This is real. And then they messaged me like 2 days later. Like they reached out to me. I didn't reach out to them. They reached out to me like right after I got it. And then so they're sending us some chocolate bars.
That's good.
Same thing. Right? Isn't it crazy? We live in this day where, we could have and instead of having the whole chocolate bar, just have a couple squares, it gets the taste out of your mouth.
Like dark chocolate's not that bad if it's low sugar. It's just like another fat source. So,
yeah,
it doesn't have to be demonized. You just got to make good choices.
And you know what? This isn't like one of the things we're kind of outlined today, but this is a great question because it goes into, managing your day and prioritizing things. And I want to go into it a little bit, but this question came up and it said, I saw Ashley listed as a coach when I was looking into signing up with Team Elite. How does she manage taking clients and competing? And I think that that's an important question, not just for Ashley, but for everyone out there, because Ashley sets up her life in a way where she can still keep competing as a priority. Ashley she's very good as a coach. She's done very well, at least a pro every year, and but she says, as of now, I'm an athlete first and I'm on a coach second. The athlete is my priority. And so because of that, I'm going to be coaching less people so I can manage it well. So Ashley really does take a minimal amount of people on.
And I know my limits. Yes. Because I never want anybody to feel neglected. So I know just taking a small group is best for now until the day I'm not competing as much, which isn't anytime soon.
Yeah. And so with Ashley, even in the months of like 2 months before the Olympia, she won't take on any new clients either. And it'll just be during the year. She'll keep obviously the ones that she still has, but the point of it is that she keeps her life set up so she can be successful for the sport, and she's not taking on 100 clients or anything like that. And if you guys like literally she could make 4 times the money if she wanted to, but the sport is so important to her that through coaching, 4 times more through coaching, if she wanted to, but the sport is important to her, so she puts that as a priority. So that's the same thing with you guys, like outside of your life. If something is taking away from your sport or you think might distract from it and you really have this goal, no matter what that goal is, Will Smith had, I guess, said it best. He was like, I don't have a plan B because that creates an option to not stick to plan A.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. He's like, there's no reason for a plan B. So that's you. Your thing is, I don't need a plan B to sit back on having 100 clients in case something happens, because I'm going to be the best competitor that ever was, and I'm going to keep being the best competitor that ever was. And to climb above me is going to be really difficult because I'm setting myself up in a way where I'm not creating any room to climb above me. And so I think people need to understand that this sport is like any other sport, and you're going to have to prioritize it if you want to be good at it. And it's unfortunate because a lot of people are going to have to earn their way to be in that position, but that's the same with all sports. You see that in all sports. You'll see it in basketball where they're having to, before they get to the NBA, they're doing all these different things, and they can, finally they set themselves up where they can get to the NBA, and all they do now is focus on the NBA. You see that in in like martial arts, especially in like mixed martial arts, like UFC. These guys are doing all this stuff, trying to get through the day, working crappy jobs, whatever, and then they finally get their contract from UFC or whatever, and then now they can finally be a full-time fighter, right? They have to get there though first. So that's the thing. But in our sport, it's gonna be a similar circumstance. And you're gonna have to earn that right to get there, to be that point where you can make it as your priority. And when you do, that's when things are gonna, you can really prioritize and excel. And until then, it's gonna be hard, and so you're gonna be doing a lot of things at once. And you're gonna need to prioritize your sport still and not let anything get in the way. But as Ashley always says, I'm an athlete first, and that's gonna be my priority. And I think that's important to talk about.
Yeah.
Because
you gotta be self-aware. You can't do everything.
Yeah, you can't do
at once. Something's gonna suffer if you try.
Yeah, so you just have to be smart with, if you're a coach, if you're doing all these other things, this is going to take a lot of your time and energy. There's no way of getting away from that if you're doing it at a high level. If you're doing it, just to get on stage and transformation, having fun, totally different thing. But this is going to be for those girls who are saying, I want to be a pro. I want to be the next big thing. I want this to be my career. Like, there's going to be some sacrifice involved. And if there wasn't, honestly, it wouldn't be worth it. I don't think anyone really want to do it if it came easy. So
absolutely, I agree. So I think another part of bikini that can be mentally tough is just, you say it all the time, bikini competitors will have to do so many workouts that are very repetitive, the same body parts all the time. And also something to mention, and I think we talked about this last week, sometimes you won't be able to get to train a certain body part anymore, and that can mess with people as well. That might mentally like make them think, oh my gosh, my shoulders are too big, but if I stop training, I'm going to lose them altogether. And what do I do?
Yeah.
Or they just kind of crave the pump. There's a lot of those people out there too, that's like, you can't pull them out of the gym because they just like to lift heavy and go hard. And at some point, if you have too much muscle in that area, you're going to have to tone it down or stop training that altogether. And that can be hard on people.
Yeah, that for sure. I think that one is really tough. I get that a lot too with inquiries. People will be, a lot of times, I work with all levels, amateurs, pros, whatever, advanced athletes, but a lot of times I'll get advanced athletes like writing me saying, oh, my feedback was my shoulders were too big, but I only train them now once a week, or I train them now only twice a week. I'm like,
twice too many.
Yeah, exactly.
Twice
and I'm like,
a week too many.
Okay, so the problem is just reduce your shoulder workouts to basically none until it's where they need to be, and then you can maintain them. But the problem is people maintain them while they're too big.
Yes.
Thinking that they're going to shrink by doing less than they were doing, but that's still more than everyone else would be doing to get bigger shoulders. Like,
yeah.
And if you wanted to shrink it, it does go away relatively quick. You can reduce a little bit of it, relatively quick. This injury showed me how fast things could really disappear.
Well, that one's like, you're not even moving it.
Yeah, I'm not moving it at all. But if you're reducing how much you're working, it could go away pretty quick. A couple months, it'll come down, is what I've noticed. But yeah, absolute immobilization will shrink you up. I showed my mom a video of my arm the other day, and I was like, this is it. There's like no cap. My arms are all skinny up here. It's so crazy how fast it goes away. But I'm not worried about it.
Is that arm getting beefier though?
No, because I haven't lifted my upper body since my injury. It was January 6th. So
but you're using it more.
Yeah, I am. I'm getting better at being left-handed.
Yeah.
I've used chopsticks the other day left-handed. That's a pretty big advancement. That's a pretty big day. So yeah, I'm getting better with the left quite a bit, which is kind of fun. But as far as competing goes, and having to mentally stop doing things, another one that people have to stop doing is like chest. I see a lot of girls with like big pec lines. I'll see a lot of like pec lines, and they're like, oh well, I only do it now once a week. And I'm like, in bikini, you're probably not going to be doing it at all. Like, for 99% of people, they just don't do chest at all. So all these little things like you talk about, the mental game of it is a big part of it in the gym. It's funny because when I first started coaching primarily bikini athletes, that was like in 2015, 16, maybe even 14. It was all my bodybuilder friends that I was coaching prior were like, kind of like they would like make fun of me, razz me, because I was still competing at the time too. And I would be like, they were like, it's just a fitness model division. You need to just get a pretty girl up there and they'll be fine if they have a good waistline and they don't have to be that lean. Like, what's the point of it? Type of thing. And I was like, dude, if you go through a bikini workout for 6 months and you get through it and you still want to do it, I'll pay you to do that. Cause I don't think you realize how mentally tough it is to get under a glute bridge and a hip thrust 3 times a week for 6 months. Like, as you're like, wait, what are you working out today? Oh, shoulders or glutes. So what are you working out today? Oh, shoulders or glutes. Like, that's the bikini life, it becomes really repetitive. In the bodybuilding world, obviously lifting heavier weights and harder workouts and things like that. But in terms of the freedom of it, having an arm day, like a pure arm day, and then a shoulder day, and then a leg day, and then a chest day, then a back day, like, it's fun. You have variety every single time in the gym. Like, it's a different workout 5 of the days of the week. But with bikini, it's like you might be doing the same 2 workouts back to back. Like, it's just shoulder day, shoulder and back day, leg and glute day, shoulder and back day, leg and glute day. Like, you might be on some type of split like that if you're at that advanced stage. And it becomes a lot in the gym to go into the gym motivated to do the same workout you did 2 days ago. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Very true. Sometimes it's just, even sometimes we see girls that like you can't pull them away from the heavy weights and they still want to go heavy. And in that case, sometimes they just move to wellness or something else because, they just like to go ham. And some of the movements aren't really bikini friendly, that are too compoundy, or even CrossFitters. I don't think those are the best types of workouts for bikini competitors either, just because they can be very like trap dominant and maybe not the aesthetics that we're looking for. So
yeah, and you'll run into those people too. And this is like I guess kind of like a more of a PSA for if you're one of those people going into bikini, like a CrossFitter or maybe even like an Orange Theory person or something like that, where or a class girl at like doing like group X classes at the gym. When you go from those things and you're getting a different workout every single day, the workout of the day, all that stuff, and you're going from those things to a bikini workout, you're going to understand it's not going to be the variety that you were doing before. And if you're used to like having a new workout every single time that you go to the gym, you're in for a little bit of a disappointment, because your workouts are based purely on how you look at that point for competing for bikini. You need more. What do you need more of? Oh, you need more hamstrings and glutes. Guess what? Your workouts are going to be more often than not hamstrings and glutes, right? That's how you're going to target it. So that's another mentally tough thing. You got to prepare yourself. There's a lot of repetitive things like Ashley's talking about, repetitive workouts. So
another tough aspect of any physique sport is comparing yourself to others, because that's basically what you're doing on stage. You're getting compared to others. But now in this new age of social media, it adds an extra layer, because you see your competitors like posting a picture or a video, and even backstage, seeing them walk around. A lot of people get intimidated or like to think that they're behind or not as good because they see this certain competitor. But that one, honestly, that doesn't get to me, because I've been around to know that a lot of times with photos, they're under, like, you call it goon lighting, use filters, maybe even snatch that waist a little more in, or even walking backstage too. It's like some girls have like the best backstage bodies, what we call it. Like, you see them like just stand there or walking, and they just, everything's so put together. But once they hit the poses, it doesn't translate in the pose. And then opposite, some girls you see backstage and you're like, oh, it's not impressive. But then when you see them hit the pose, it's like, whoa, there we go.
Yeah.
And I think too, sometimes you can be overly impressive in bikini. Let's be honest. It sounds weird to say, but if you're too impressive, like you're too X framed, or you're too muscular, or you're too lean, being too impressive is not a good thing. Or if you have a standout body part that's like, whoa, the first thing you notice, that's also not good either.
Yeah. It's funny. Yeah, the best physique doesn't necessarily win. Yeah. That was
or what you think is the best physique.
Yeah. So it was funny because Sandy does her seminars. And if you guys haven't been lucky enough to go to one of Sandy's seminars, like, watch the schedule. She puts it on, is it NPC Junior Nats? She has it on her Instagram, and Sandy on Sandy Lane. But she has this, like, what is it called when you like click through something and it's like different
PowerPoint?
Yeah, PowerPoint. There you go. I was forgetting for a second. Like a PowerPoint, and then she'll have 2 physiques up, and she'll say who's got the better physique, and everyone always goes to the girl that is like the better physique, right? And then she's like, hey, who's the better bikini physique? And like usually the class, like the people at the workshop will split. They'll be like, oh, well, the girl on the right, still the same girl, the girl on the right. And then Sandy's like, no, the girl on the left has a better bikini physique. So just because this girl, she's like, I don't deny that this girl on the right has a better physique. No one would deny that the girl's a better physique, but better bikini physique is this girl on the left, right? And so people don't understand that. So it's like really frustrating sometimes when you see someone, you're like, I'm clearly better than this girl. Like, I don't know why I'm losing. Well, you passed the price is right limit. Like Ashley says, you want to tell me the price is right?
I have no idea what you're talking
You
about.
say, you've said it before where you can go like just a little bit under in like
Oh,
your physique, a little bit under
like
in your,
as far as conditioning, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
you use it as a conditioning thing.
Mhm.
So you want to go into that with your,
Yeah, so in bikini, it's almost like you want to get as close as you can to being your conditioning max, which is different for everyone, but without going over. Because once you go over the point of being too conditioned, you'll get marked down. So if you were to play it safe, I guess, and I would say this only really applies to like the pro level because in the amateurs, it's like a different set of girls. But um, you almost want to err on the side of caution of being a little softer than what you think rather than being too conditioned, because if you go over, they'll mark you down big time for being too conditioned. But if you're a little bit softer, they might give you a little more grace with that. I
yeah,
think they
for
might
sure.
be like, well, you could have tightened up a little bit. But once you go over the line where you're too conditioned and you start seeing striations, tendons popping, they're gonna be like, nope, 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 nope.
Yeah,
We'd rather you be a little softer, a little on the soft side. But again, everyone's different, so it's hard to explain that on an individual basis. But just those cues of being striated, like too many tendons showing, things like that,
yeah,
gotta watch out for
the
that.
hit is way worse for being a little bit too over than a little
Yeah.
bit too under. It's like a
Mhm. Yeah.
five
In
place
bikini,
drop
yes.
in bikini for
Mhm.
being too over. A little bit under might be just one or two. It's
Right.
like
Yeah.
a huge difference. But going back to the picture thing, who knew that was so crazy? 2 years ago when we were talking about this, before anyone was like talking about editing pictures, like I didn't know how rampant it was in the editing of pictures thing. But yeah, if you're comparing yourselves to others, like it is so crazy how they're editing these pictures these days. Like now I'm a little bit more alert of it, but it's just so wild seeing what people are doing in their pictures and still doing in their
You can
pictures. Like
even edit videos too.
I've seen that, the
Yeah.
filter, like the waist filters
Yeah,
and
that's
stuff.
crazy.
Yeah. Did you see that girl? I think she was in Korea, who was like, she had a huge audience and everyone thought she looked this way. And then the
Mhm.
filter like glitched. Did
Yeah.
you see that one? And she ended
Mhm.
up being like probably 40 years older than everyone thought.
Mhm.
Everyone thought that she was talking to some like 18-year-old girl who was like super followed. And then she like turned and it glitched. And then
Yeah.
she like lost all of her following and all this because she was like a fake person. It's so
Mhm.
crazy, the levels of it. And I never really thought about it. Like how it would affect me. Cause at this point I wasn't competing and I didn't really compare myself to others, but and then I had a moment where I realized I'm like, oh, this is wild. And there was, so there's this guy online and he's a boxer and he has like the fastest hands I've ever seen. Like it's crazy how fast this guy is. And I was like, man, this guy's like my same weight. I'm not even close to as fast as this guy. Like I shouldn't be that far off if we're same weight. Maybe if the guy's like a super lightweight 100-pounder, right? I get that. And then I was like, I sent it to my boxing coach. He goes, yeah, that's crazy. He's really fast. I wonder if he's speeding up this film because that's like really fast. I've never seen anyone that fast that way. And I was like, huh. And so I sent it to my friend too, who does these things. And he's like, dude, that's so edited that video because watch the curtain in the background. And the curtain's like going like this.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, he sped it up like probably 2 times. Like that's why he's so fast. So
Mhm.
for that, but then I realized that moment, I'm like, that's the same thing as a bikini competitor seeing a girl who snatched her waist, who blew out her glutes, who blew up her shoulders, because they're seeing something that's unrealistic, but they're comparing themselves to an unrealistic thing. Even that girl doesn't look like that. So
Right.
like that was like my moment where I was like, that's why
Mhm.
editing your picture sucks,
Yeah.
because everyone's going through that moment of like, man, I'm slow, like I'll never be that fast. And I was like, okay, now I get it, why everyone's so like, I guess, upset about this whole editing thing. Because before it was kind of BS too. I was like, who cares? Like, let them edit their photos. If they feel like they need to edit their photo, let them edit their photos. And then I was like, oh, it really impacts them because they're trying to get to somewhere they can't physically get to.
Yeah.
So yeah, so just know that, guys out there, editing pictures, it is running rampant out there. So if you're comparing yourselves to people, make sure you're comparing yourselves to them in real life. That'd be
Yes,
the only time
and
you want
on
to do it.
stage in your pose. And I would also go on to say that even sometimes it's not the most accurate to compare stage photos from one show to the next, like
Mhm.
because lighting changes big time. It changes how lean you look, even the angle of which the photographer is shooting. Sometimes if the photographer is shooting more at a low angle and getting that, like, I guess you call it a superhero angle where you look taller and leaner versus a photographer that's shooting like straight on belly button height.
Yep.
right? It can make you look so different. You can look thicker, you can look softer. The lighting plays a big role. Some shows, like you can go from one show to the next, be just as lean. You'll look so much softer in one light and then so much leaner in the other. It's crazy.
Yeah, that especially the angle thing.
Yeah.
When you see a photographer like right behind the judges and they're not elevated and they're looking up, and you do that like slightly leaning forward transition pose where your shoulders are like square on, that makes girls' shoulders to waist ratios look crazy when they're like looking up at them, like the superhero thing you're talking
Mhm.
about. But if the photographer is in the very back with like a telephoto lens on like a stage and they're shooting straight on, it actually flattens them out a little bit
It
too.
makes you look thicker too.
Yeah.
It'd be like, I swear my waist isn't that thick. What the
Yeah.
heck? But yeah, that definitely can play with your mind. So even then, I guess that's your best way to compare if you're not going against the competitor. But even then, I would say don't get intimidated until you're literally standing next to them on the same stage, on with the same light in the same show, because it changes so much. But I think the biggest takeaway too, even from that, is just to say sometimes if you're too impressive, it's not a good thing because you can be too much. You don't want to be too much in bikini. You don't want to be too lean. You don't want to be too muscular. You don't want a body part to stand out too much because I know everyone wants big glutes these days. That is the end thing. But even then, if your glutes are too big, that's not a good thing. You might be admired by a lot of people on Instagram, but for bikini, everything needs to be balanced in proportion because this isn't wellness. We shouldn't be chasing the imbalance between our upper and lower body.
Yeah. You got that down nailed on that one.
Yeah.
So, I think another one we can go into too is like dealing with, setbacks because you're going to have them in the
Yes.
sport. It's just pretty much no way around it. It's just you're pushing your body to a limit, whether that be a setback of an actual injury, whether that be a setback of you hitting a plateau, whether
Getting
you're
sick.
getting sick before a big show. I mean, that sucks. That happens surprisingly often where someone's just sick, before a show and it slows their progress for 2 weeks and they only had 8 weeks to go and now they have to push their show. Things are gonna, you're depending on the human body to respond for something. So you're never going to be able to fully have a linear path to a show. It's never going to be, hey, I have 15 weeks to go, or I have 10 weeks to go. I have 15 pounds to go. It's like, I need to lose 1.5 pounds per week. And I'm perfectly going to lose 1.5 pounds per week and be stage ready in exactly 10 weeks. Like that's not going to be how that works. It'd be perfect if it did. Be great if it did. But the amount of preps that actually go the way that we're expecting to go and we plan it to go is like 1%. Like some preps go smoother than others and some preps go even better. But if you were to plan a prep out, it actually going through the way you think it's going to be, the way you plan it out, even if I plan it out as a coach, like there's going to be adjustments made. There's just always going to be some adjustment that has to be made. So
absolutely. And so it sucks too is like a lot of times setbacks aren't even in your control. Like it's nothing you necessarily did wrong. Sometimes it can be just personal life stuff. Next thing you know, you have to drop off your kids or something because the car broke down or something in life is kind of preventing you from being your best self. And that does suck too. But yeah, it's so unpredictable. So I guess word of advice is just be ready ahead of time when you're competing at a show. Just give yourself, a few weeks of off weeks of no progress weeks or getting sick or whatever the case may be. Never really plan on competing right to last minute, like hoping and praying everything goes according to plan and prep because it's probably something along the way is going to be not the best. Something's going to happen. You get sick, hit a plateau, whatever the case may be. So better be ready ahead of time.
that's a good thing to talk about too, is just being ready ahead of time and giving yourself those weeks. Because in the scenario I talked about, let's say someone needs to lose 15 pounds, they give themselves 10 weeks, 1.5 pounds a week. Doesn't sound unrealistic, but that would mean that you're dieting even the week before the show and you're cutting the week before the show. You're still doing your cardio the week before because you're trying to hit that 1.5 pounds. So realistically, the best case scenario, you'd be ready 2 weeks ahead of the show. Like if you're ready 2 weeks ahead of the show, then you cruising into the show is going to be so much better and so much more predictable on your body. We can reduce all the inflammation. We can get rid of any water retention. We have the ability to make sure you're 100% full without worrying about it at the very, very end. When you take someone who hasn't had a carb for, 16 weeks and doing 2 hours of cardio because we're trying to lose whatever, 20 pounds in 8 weeks or something. And then you have to fill them out at the end. Like you got to remember, they're going to be in a different stage of carb sensitivity at that point. Giving someone carbs who hasn't had them in 10 weeks and doing all this crazy cardio and then just hoping and expecting that your body's going to absorb those carbs well at that point is you're kind of praying. It's kind of like throwing a Hail Mary in football. Like it's like the last thing, you're like, oh, we need some carbs now. Let's just hopefully you absorb them, And usually what happens is that person will get a little bloated because they haven't had carbs in so long. They'll retain water because they're super sensitive to absorbing those carbs. They were like, what is this? I haven't had a carb and I haven't seen a grain of rice for 10 weeks, right? So, and so, but if you're ready ahead of time, you're 2 weeks ready 2 weeks ahead of time, even 10 days ahead of time, you start your first little carb reload then, and your body just absorbs it. And then you need less carbs going into the show. And if you need less carbs going into the show, hey, your stomach looks a little flatter because you're not eating so many carbs the last 2 days before the show, because your body already had enough carbs, kind of 50% filled out going into those last couple of days, right? So all these little things do matter with how you prepare for the show and how you do your off seasons, of course. But like Ashley was saying, it's a year-round thing. It's 365, as close to 365 as you can get it is really the goal, I guess you should say, right?
Yeah. And that doesn't mean you can't take breaks here and there, but for the most part, it's not off and on. We say in season, off season, but it should never be off season. It should be like improvement season, honestly, because you should never be off. Give yourself a few days grace for some breaks here and there, of course, but you can't just like resume 100% after being so crappy with your diet in the off season and just hoping for the best. It's not off and on. It's not black or white. There's that gray area, and that gray area is improvement season.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So, what are the things you think that bikini competitors maybe struggle with? That's the mental part of it that we haven't covered today.
I would say the variance in physiques, because you might get feedback that you are too lean, maybe, but then you'll be like, but wait a minute, the girl that won was leaner than me. Or maybe the opposite. They'll say you're too soft, and then the girl that won is softer than you. And you're like, I don't understand. You got to realize everybody's different. We all look better or worse with different amounts of body fat, muscle, leanness, everything. So what might apply to the girl that won doesn't apply to you, right? I've been told a few times last season that I could have been leaner, but it's like, well, maybe even then I was leaner than most, right? But for my physique personally, I look better at a certain level of conditioning. So we're all different. And I think that can play with your mind too, because you might be comparing yourself to the winner, but the winner has a different structure, different genetics, different build. So, it's going back to comparing yourself to another person, but just know that there's going to be variances in physiques. Something that fits for you might not fit for someone else. So just make sure to really take in that feedback and just know that we're not really meant to look exactly the same in bikini. Yeah. There is not one size fits all.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of bikini too, because most structures can do pretty well in bikini. If you look at the top, I mean, really, you can even look at like the top 8 at the Olympia, and probably I think like almost all of them are completely different physiques. Definitely the top 5 of different structures, from an X frame to athletic frame to curvy fit to to wide shoulders with even larger quad. Like there's just so many different physiques that do well in bikini. So it is going to take you time to find what is going to be your best approach for your structure, and that's the important thing. Maybe you're a curvy fit girl who's coming in way too shredded all the time, and your success really lies with you getting a little softer. And maybe you're a shredded athletic girl and you've been coming in curvy, trying to come in curvy fit, and that's just not ever going to be successful for you. So you have to, be that shredded girl. So, finding what's best for you is going to take time. It's going to take, it's rare that you're going to just nail it your first time and then be like, oh, that's the way they like me. It's pretty rare. But once you start doing it for a while, you kind of figure out, this is how they like me. This is what the feedback they keep giving me. And this is what I got to bring.
Yeah.
So
it's some trial and error. You're going to have to take some risks, and it's going to be a little scary. You might have to try to come in softer, even though you're used to being shredded, and that might mess with your head. Like, oh no, but I don't want to look too out of shape, or I don't want to get last place. If I come in softer, it's going to take trial and error, because believe me, we all had to kind of figure that out along the way too. So,
yeah. So yeah, we'll be pretty much done here, but I want to answer one question. We would try to get some of these. I appreciate when you guys are watching live, and I always want to try to answer a question or two when we can. And this question comes in from Sarah the Alchemist, and it says, "What is the best form of cardio to keep glutes, incline treadmill, flat treadmill, or stair stepper?" And I think that what I will say is that I think people overestimate how much cardio affects the glute fullness, because when you're doing, so there's a aerobic exercise and anaerobic exercise. Anytime you do something like past the rep range of 20, they say 25 reps, but I think that there's a little bit of argument there. Anything past the rep of 25 reps becomes a aerobic exercise. So it's an aerobic activity versus an anaerobic activity. And you're only going to really build a lot of muscle doing anaerobic activities. There are some outliers, like you look at like cyclists have these giant quads and stuff like that. And skaters that do these, like, they're doing more than 25 reps before they go around a track and they have these huge quads. But I don't think that there is going to be a major impact when you're doing your cardio on how it's going to keep your glutes full. What's going to keep your glutes full is you working out in the gym, keeping a constant stimulus while you're in a dieting stage. Maybe your glutes are getting flatter when you're dieting down because you're dieting down too hard and maybe doing too much cardio. That could be part of it. I'm not saying that this is you, but if you are one of those people who has to do, 2 hours of cardio because you had bad off seasons, it doesn't matter what form of cardio you do, you're going to lose some glutes. You're going to pay for some of that glutes if you're eating 1,000 calories and doing 2 hours of cardio. There's no way you're going to keep your glutes full the entire time of your prep when you're doing that. And you're going to sacrifice some muscle with that extreme dieting approach. So,
but I'll also add on to that. A lot of people think they're losing fullness, but they're losing body fat. And especially for women, that's where you're going to put a lot of body fat on. So yeah, you're going to see that measurement go down and your glutes are going to feel smaller, and as they should, because in a perfect world, I would love to keep my glute measurement where it is now, but also I realize there's a layer of fat on top. So just keep that in mind too.
Good catch on that. Yeah. Because I've had that happen many times, where people just start thinking that that's all muscle.
Yeah.
Some people store body fat really well in their glutes.
Right.
Some people, you can't really tell that much that is body fat. And if you're one of those girls, good luck. Awesome for you. That's like the best case scenario, where you're not seeing any cellulite. It's round still and full and hardish. You're not like squishy glutes where you can totally tell. Like some girls store body fat incredibly well. They have thicker skin. They store their body fat. There's just you can't even tell the difference. And then when they lean out, it goes away and they're like, oh, I'm losing my glutes. And you're like, no, you're just really fortunate with how you store body. You can't tell that it's body fat, so that is a possibility. So yeah. So the main thing, keep your workouts hard, keep your calories relatively high-ish, for relative to prep, of course. And don't over cardio them off. And you should be fine with any form of cardio for the most part.
Yeah. I will say anecdotally though, I like to do step mill for the glutes, especially if I do like HIIT and then use the kickbacks as my rest during HIIT. And I will say, if anything, it activates the glutes. I feel like I can feel them more. They get a nice little pump. So if I do that before glute day, it's nice, nice way to be like, okay, now we're pumped up, ready to go. It's activated. I feel it,
Yeah.
So that's just a personal thing. And maybe there's no science to it, but
there is.
I do like the step mill for glutes, especially.
Yeah. So what you're referring to, and this is a whole nother thing, but it's called post-activation potentiation. So what it is basically the nervous system is really, I guess you want to call it, awakened by you doing, for example, a HIIT cardio. You're really priming the nervous system to get ready for a glute workout. So HIIT is going to be different in terms of cardio than what we're talking about for like a prep cardio where you're doing, 45 minutes of steady state or something like that. Once you get to those rep ranges, not going to do much for you on the glutes. If anything, really, it's not going to do really anything for you that pace. Harder the cardio, the better in terms of calorie burning, though. But in terms of HIIT cardio, yeah, you definitely can. Because if you're still staying under that, let's say 45-second threshold before you're failing in doing like a stair mill or something like that, then yeah, that's close. That's very close to doing a lifting, because you got to figure you're lifting for how long, like 45 seconds, before you're done with your set, a minute before you're done with your set. So same type of thing. If you're doing a 45-second set as a HIIT and you're going really, really hard, yeah, you definitely can create some stimulus. If you're not going too much endurance based, right? So it's different type of cardio there too. But yeah, definitely. So there's that as well. So, but anyway, back to the potentiation. Once you get your nervous system primed and then you go into your workout, the theory is you're going to be able to activate more muscle fibers, therefore be a little bit stronger, therefore have better workouts because you're at your maximum potential. Everything's awakened as much as it can be at that point versus you going in without any of that potentiation stimulus, right? So that's the whole thing for that. Yeah.
So wake up those glutes,
Wake
everyone.
them up.
Wake them up.
Excuse me.
Set that alarm.
Excuse me.
Hey,
Time to
wake
get up.
wake up.
Don't hit the snooze. So I guess with that,
that's all for this week.
That's all for this week. So thank you guys so much for tuning in and for the nice comments. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.